going to take a look at something a little bit different, but it's still a really important and significant topic that definitely needs to be discussed and does not get discussed enough throughout your educational experience, whether it's K through 12 or in college. Part of it's just the grand concept of media literacy, but we're going to take it through the bent of social media literacy because obviously it's a class on social media and society, so we need to talk about social media literacy. All right, let's go ahead and hit the ground running, taking a look at some definitions. The first one to look at is literacy, which we kind of think of as the ability to read, but within the context that we're going to use literacy plus something. The definition of literacy that we're going to be looking at is the competence or knowledge in a specific area. Not just your ability to read, but your competence in being able to do something. Again, we normally think of literacy as your ability to read something, but we're going to take that term and apply it to other areas, such as information literacy. So that's the ability that is needed of an individual to recognize when information is needed and have the ability to find this information and then use it effectively. Essentially going, hey, I don't know how to do this. Where do I go to get that information? And then once I have that information, how do I then accomplish the task that I want to do? So there's a lot of things that are actually involved there, from being able to find a good source to being able to know how to find sources. So you can look at information literacy as not just, oh, I found a good YouTube video that shows me how to fix the problem with my toilet. But you also need to know that YouTube exists. You need to know that how-to videos are on YouTube. You need to know that how-to videos to fix your toilet, whatever the problem is on YouTube. You need to have internet access. You need to have a computer that can access the internet or a device that can access the internet. So information literacy is not just, oh, I can go find this YouTube video that's going to help me fix the toilet. There's the sort of opening steps that go into that, to knowing that that information even exists in the first place, to even know where to go look to find a credible video that will tell you how to go fix your toilet. Media literacy is the ability to not only access and analyze the information that we would see in information literacy, but also the ability to create that media. And the creation part is really important because you can't quite understand media until you've made it yourself. It's sort of one of those things of like, you'll know it once you do it. You won't understand it until you go through it. It's one thing to, say, read a book about how to go skydiving, or to watch a YouTube video on how to go skydiving, as compared to actually jumping out of a plane and going skydiving. Media literacy is the same thing. It's great to be a media consumer, and you can be information literate in that sense, but to be media literate means that you also need to know how to create that content that others might consume. So media literate individuals are better, therefore, to not only understand messages because they've created them themselves, but they can understand messages from across a spectrum of different forms of media. So if you've ever painted a picture, if you've ever written a poem, not necessarily the sort of the basics of like, oh, here's a book report or here's an assignment I did for class. There's some aspect of media literacy to that, but it's when we start thinking about sort of the creation process. And it could be the creation of, hey, I wrote an op-ed for my local newspaper, I wrote a story on Medium, I created a YouTube video, I posted a picture to Instagram. Those all types of non-regimented work. Because again, you do an assignment for this class, I've laid out for you, hey, it should be this many words, it should be these particular content things should be in there, here's how it will be evaluated. When you're given all those parameters to work within, it's not necessarily being as media literate, because a lot of the decision making on the entire thing has been taken away from you. If I tell you, hey, go paint a picture, and that's all I tell you, I don't tell you what the picture needs to be of, I don't tell you what needs to be in the picture, I don't tell you how long you have to paint the picture, I don't tell you if it needs to be black and white, oil colors, charcoal, all I tell you is go paint a picture. And you could use Microsoft Paint. I know I still have it on my computer for some reason. It leaves it wide open, and now suddenly you have a lot of things that you need to think about. So it takes it that sort of next step from information literacy, because without those restrictions, then you have to think, all right, well, what is it that I want to create? Is it person, a place, a thing? Do I want it to be abstract? Do I want it to be realistic? Do I want to use it in all dark colors? Do I want to do it at daytime, nighttime? You have to start thinking about what all those things are. And then once you finally create it, you look at that creation that you've made and you evaluate, okay, I know my thought process of what I wanted this to turn out to be. So there's one aspect of being able to evaluate quality. You have a vision up here and what you actually try to put on canvas or on the computer screen, however you're painting this picture for me. You have this vision here. Now you see it on the canvas, on the computer screen. You evaluate it based on, all right, how well did I do translating it? And then, okay, now from what I have actually created, how are other people going to interpret it? Are they going to interpret the same way that I saw it? Are they going to have a different interpretation? Is their interpretation going to be based on the quality of the work that I do? Is it going to be based on if it was an oil painting done in Microsoft Paint, if it was done with charcoal? Those things, then you start to think, what is the audience's reaction? And that only can really come from an understanding of that, can only come from once you've created something yourself. Because the best way to be able to evaluate media is to really think about the inspiration and the motivation behind the person who created it in the first place. So media literacy is the ability to identify different types of media and understand the messages that they're sending. Because at the end of the day, all media that's created, every Facebook post you make, every tweet that you make, every Instagram post, every painting, every YouTube video, every song that you write, every poem that you make, there was a reason why you made it. There's a reason why you made it in that way. There was a message in it that you wanted to come across to the audience. And understanding that every form of media that's created is based on some motivation and for some purpose, that it's meant to have some meaning to the audience. Understanding that very basic thing is vital, because then you start to critically evaluate every piece of media that you consume. Now, the problem is, if you were to do this for everything, you would be kind of locked in sort of a position of being immobile, because you'd be analyzing literally everything around you. I didn't think of this example, but I have it right here. I have a Publix gift card, okay? So on this, it says something special, you deserve it, choose that special something anytime you choose. So who decided that was the words to put on a Publix gift card? It doesn't say, hey, you can buy food with this. You want a pub sub, you can buy it with this. Why is it green? Why the color green? When I think of groceries, I don't really think of green. I think of buying meat and cheese and milk and bread. If I'm buying chicken and pork, they're kind of white, milk, white. If I buy bread, often white bread. So why not, why is green? How many green things do you buy at Publix? And why this particular font? And why the name Publix? I mean, I think Publix, we've been talking about Publix all semester from a PR standpoint, or who your target Publix are. Why is it also a grocery store? So those types of questions, you could kind of start going down a rabbit hole of trying to analyze every little single detail in this. Even whatever hell that design is, I think it might be a bow, but it maybe, is it? It looks, it could, other people could maybe interpret it as other things. So you can start to become kind of frozen and incapacitated if you delve too deep into starting to think about these things. But it's also important to have the understanding and ability to think, someone picked that color, someone picked those words, someone then approved that color and words, someone picked that name for the store, someone approved that name for the store. Why? What was their motivation? What was their inspiration? And what were they message were they trying to get across to us as a consumer? What type of message were they trying to get across to me? I have another gift. I have a couple of gift cards sitting on the desk here. Starbucks gift card. What is up with the logo? Why is that the logo? Why did they choose that logo of the mermaid with, I'm not really sure. I don't drink coffee. That's why I have an unused Starbucks card. But what was the point and purpose behind that logo and the colors and everything else? All those things, all those thoughts go into it. Every commercial you see, it is planned down to the T. Who the actors are going to be in it, what the setting is going to be, what the dialogue is going to be, what product they're going to showcase, what about the product they're going to showcase. All of those thoughts go into it. So you can start getting into the point where if you watch any TV, you would literally start analyzing every shot and every scene of everything you're watching. And then if you've got like music playing in the background, you've got to hit pause on the TV because you're like, all right, so they pick this beat, they pick these lyrics, they pick these instruments or lack of lyrics. But it's vital to kind of sometimes stop and think about that and realize that messages are created for a reason, and it's to have an impact on us. And if we don't delve into understanding that this thought process went into creating these messages, we're very susceptible to whatever message they're trying to sort of ingrain on us, to kind of influence us with. So at its core, media literacy is the ability to pay close attention to the content that we consume across a wide variety of platforms, across a wide variety of presentations and messages. So it's a critical examination of all of this, and it requires awareness, education, and practice. Simply me talking about it here isn't going to mean that you're now going to be educated enough on media literacy. We could do entire courses on media literacy. You could do multiple courses on media literacy, not just a couple slides in this PowerPoint. And also being able to do it. Again, I used earlier the skydiving example. Yes, once you skydive out of a plane, you have skydived out of a plane. You now know what that's like. But you don't necessarily really understand everything about it. A better example for that would be, okay, you've watched basketball on TV, you've played basketball video games, you've read books about LeBron James and Kobe, you have gone and seen basketball games live. Then there's a difference between you actually being on a court and I hand you a ball and I'm like, all right, go shoot some free throws. And then there's a difference between you shoot free throws for the first time, someone gives you some tips, you shoot free throws again, someone gives you some more tips, you shoot free throws again, you come back the next day, you shoot more free throws. I mean, it is one of these things that takes practice and time once you start doing it yourself to really understand, okay, this is what a free throw is like. And then that's still not the same as actually doing it in a game. It's still not the same as actually doing it in a game when the game is on the line. It's not the same as doing it in a game when the game is on the line and it's the championship. So there's a lot of value in being more media literate. First is the ability to think critically, being able to evaluate media messages, the messages that they're trying to ingrain in us, the messages that they're trying to influence us with, and being able to understand the key messages that the media is essentially trying to alter our way of thinking. And again, this doesn't have to just be the news. This is entertainment, this is advertising, this is public relations, this is marketing, this is everything from data mining to a song that you hear on the radio. And again, a lot of these things will relate back to that basic concept of agenda setting and framing theory, because from a very broad sense, they kind of all fall within this concept. Being a smart consumer of products and information, it helps us determine whether something we're reading is credible. Are you able to look at product reviews or restaurant reviews, whether it's a product review on Amazon or a restaurant review on Yelp, and being able to read it critically, being able to recognize, I think this is somebody who might have a stake in the company or somebody who has an axe to grind, and maybe this isn't the best review. Am I making a smart purchasing decision based on the reviews that I've read, and why is this person saying something negative, or why is this person saying something positive? When it comes to just being aware of the intent that advertising messages are intending to have on us. Remember, advertising is trying to convince us to do something we don't really want to or don't really need to. It's you need to buy a new car, you need to come buy this beer, you need to buy these clothes, you need to buy these diamond rings. You can see a lot of videos on how diamonds really have have very little value. And despite the fact that basically marketing, and particularly here in the United States, has convinced us otherwise. An engagement ring should cost 2 months of salary. Why? Because advertisers put that idea in our heads. It's not because diamonds are necessarily that valuable. There's giant stocks of diamonds. Every family has diamonds. You could pass down diamond heirlooms across the board. And I understand, not every family has diamonds, but there's a good chance that somebody in your family has a diamond that when they die they could give to you and then you could use, but that doesn't help the diamond industry, so they have to create those marketing messages to go, nah, you got an engagement ring? You better go out and buy a new one. Better cost 2 months of your salary. If it doesn't, do you really love the person? And then if they get a diamond ring and it's not big enough or there's no diamonds in it, could they really love you? Should you say yes to their proposal? Recognize point of view. Again, everyone who creates a media message has a perspective and a motivation in doing so. Being able to understand the point of view of the creator of that message and what the meaning is that they're trying to present to us as an audience. And then also thinking about how this information should be placed in context. Because it's one thing to try to understand a creator, and I'm using creator very broadly here, a creator's message in 2019 as opposed to maybe something in 1919. And the motivation that someone might have had then is maybe a different motivation than someone would have now. If we look at someone's motivation, say, during the Great Depression, why they might create art, why they might create literature, that's very different from, say, the booming 1980s where it was, Wall Street and everything else. So we have to understand in context why somebody might be motivated to create something. In context, what led them to create this particular piece of art or music or movie. We sometimes think about this and we'll look at, this director or this screenwriter or this author, because they grew up with this kind of family or in this kind of neighborhood, this has influenced the work that they've created. So if we can have a basic understanding that how someone grew up will influence the movies somebody makes or the books that they write, we should also have an understanding that how someone grew up and the experiences that they've have will influence something as simple as how they make a YouTube video that we watch on how to fix our toilet. Create media responsibly. Once we know that the media that we create can have an impact on people, we're more likely to think more critically about what the impact will be of the media we create. Understanding the communication process, understanding, hey, if I put out this message that says X, there's a good chance that people will respond as Y, but they might respond as Z as well. So I could put out a message and say, hey everybody, hope you all have a happy Easter. And some people will say, hey, thanks, appreciate it. You do the same. Then there'll be some people like, well, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in Easter, and why are you telling me happy Easter? Or there'll be people like, well, I'm Jewish. Why are you telling me happy Easter? And that sort of reaction that people might have to it, you've got to understand that's a possibility. So when you decide to create that message, hey everybody, have a happy Easter. You need to know that there's going to be an effect and a reaction on people and that you need to be prepared for it. But that also means that you have to think, if I am someone who thinks critically about this, then I have to recognize people will have that reaction to me. So therefore, what is my motivation for creating the message in the first place? If I know this is going to potentially upset people who are atheists, then what is my motivation in then still doing it? Is it because I want to upset them? Is it because I don't care about their feelings and their opinions? Is it because I just am uneducated and unaware that media messages can have an impact and people will view them in a certain way? Identify the role of media in our culture. Everything from gossip magazines, memes. Media is telling us something. Media is shaping our view of the world and compelling us to do things. You look at the Kardashians and you think, all right, well, how are they billionaires? What are they doing? Who doesn't want to be a billionaire? Who doesn't want to have a ton of money, have really nice houses and really nice cars? So what do I need to do to mimic their actions to have the same kind of life they do? I don't know if you want to mimic their actions, even if it achieves the life that they do, but there are definitely people who are going to be influenced in such a way. And then you also have to understand that there are media companies that promote their lifestyle to us, and knowing it's going to have an impact on our culture. So what does it mean when you have media corporations that are like, look, this is what the Kardashians are like. We're going to spread throughout society this ideal that some people are going to try to live up to. This pattern of behavior, this way of treating people, this way of interacting with people, this way of dealing with people. There are literally people at the top to the bottom who are like involved in creating this message. And the people at the top are saying, this is going to have an impact on people, and we kind of think we know what that impact's going to be. We support it, and we want people to see it and be impacted in such a way. I mean, that is a process. It's again, studio executives, TV network executives, media companies, they're not like, oh, the Kardashians seem popular, don't know why, don't know who these people are. Let's give them more airtime, I guess. Is that everybody good with it? You're all good? Yeah, they seem to get some ratings. Cool. No, they're going to look into every aspect, and then what messages bring in the most ratings, what create the most interest and most interaction, and also know that the message that they're putting out there, and view that message as something that should go out there. So look at that as when you see the Kardashians, yes, it's easy to blame them or any group or media company or anything that you're looking at. It's easy to blame the people at the lower levels, the people that you might see on camera, the people who are creating it. But you have to understand that there are people much higher up in that ecosystem that are allowing that message to go out because either they believe in it or because their pursuit, and we talked about this looking back at entertainment, their pursuit is the dollar and have no care about the impact it's going to have on society, or simply don't care if it has that impact on society. So media literacy is a really kind of interesting topic. And there's whole schools on being, there's all sorts of things where you could look at critical theory, which is a whole branch of sort of the social sciences. Critical theorists basically look at things within our culture, from media to art to personalities to people to politics to government, and we'll look at it and see how it is meant to control the population. And control can be used in different ways. It can be used to control positively, to control negatively. I don't necessarily get myself too much into the critical theory area of social science research, but I think there is an important aspect of it, of realizing, again, that all media messages are created for a purpose and an intention to have an impact on us, and we need to be aware of that. Understanding the author's goals, kind of talked about this, knowing that they have decided to put out this message to potentially change your mind, the way you view a political candidate, a political party, a book, a movie, an actor, an actress, how you view a particular neighborhood, a particular group of people, any of those things. I mean, you can basically be a news organization. You can say, look, this neighborhood, I mean, the housing prices have gone down a lot, and it's an area that really needs a lot of work, but you don't have people who want to move in. You don't have people that really want to help this neighborhood, because we keep showing crime stories from this neighborhood. I mean, this neighborhood, we keep doing crime story after crime story after crime story after crime story. You could have the news organization go, you know what, we're not going to do any crime stories from there for like a week or two to kind of improve people's feelings about it, particularly if this is going to be around where maybe there's some sort of local vote about should we improve the roads, or should we do something in this area. I mean, the media, even on a very micro level, the news media, even on a very micro level, can have an impact like that by simply saying, look, we ain't going to talk about this for a bit because we want to, by taking it off the front burner, by not setting the agenda for it, people will forget about it, and it can be influenced in other ways. And that's a really kind of scary thing, because essentially then you have the media being unobjective and trying to change society, not just inform society. So social media and information literacy. Media literacy then comes down to a person's ability to critically evaluate information. Social media literacy is having the proficiency to communicate appropriately and responsibly, and to evaluate conversations critically within the realm of socially based technologies. Essentially, we're now looking at social media literacy as beyond just sort of media literacy, to also include the communication channels themselves, which then really gets into the data mining and how the people who create these platforms want us to interact on them, how they want companies to be able to use them. Very, very interesting things to start going into that algorithm of why we see some content over others. And that's an important question in and of itself, particularly when you have some of these platforms that have a tremendous impact on society. So that takes us into the next part, which is kind of a delve into fake news, because obviously fake news is a story that continues to go around, and it's a story and a concept that is not going away anytime soon for a lot of different reasons. So we know that there are fake news websites, hoax websites that deliberately publish hoaxes, propaganda, disinformation, all claiming to be real news. This could be sites where that are politically partisan. This could be sites that are just trying to be sensational to drive web traffic. Web traffic means you can charge more by pay-per-click, more people coming to your site. You have ads on there. People see those ads. They click on those. This is all ways to generate money. Now, you also have the satire sites like The Onion. Those aren't quite the same thing because those are purposely intending to be incorrect, to be satirical, to be funny. Even Larry Sabato sometimes will put some of the Onion stories out there because they're kind of funny. So he did this one April 8th, and this was a story from The Onion. ISIS adds few violent white supremacists in bid to get U.S. to rescind terrorist designation. So, essentially The Onion going, look, ISIS is adding a few members of the Klan so that the government won't keep attacking them. It's a humorous concept, and you even have somebody like Larry Sabato being like, that's kind of funny. I'm going to share that out there. Now, Larry Sabato, I have 150% certainty knows, hey, this is The Onion, it's not real. But was still kind of putting it out there to the fact that, you do have that kind of other side of fake news that's purposely, humorously, satirically incorrect. But the problem is, there will be people who may not recognize that. There'll be people who are like, wow, look at that. Now, hopefully they recognize The Onion, but that doesn't always happen. And where this is an issue, and this was a quote from President Obama, and people, if they just repeat attacks enough and outright lies over and over again, as long as it's on Facebook and people can see it, as long as it's on social media, people start believing it. And it creates this dust cloud of nonsense. The point is still the recognition by the most powerful person on the planet, hey, Facebook has and social media has a lot of fake news out there, and people consume this stuff, and it leads them to believe certain things, and then they propagate these incorrect messages, which creates this snowball of misinformation that can be particularly dangerous to any democratic society. So why do people then make this if we know it's such a bad thing? Because it makes money, because you can make good money at it, particularly depending on where you live. There was a story from a couple years ago inside the Macedonian fake news complex about a Macedonian man who made a lot of money off of fake news. Between August and November 2016, this man earned nearly $16,000 off of his two pro-Trump websites when the average monthly salary in Macedonia was about $371. Now, again, this isn't, I don't care if you like Trump, don't like Obama, don't like Obama. It's still the fact that one of the reasons why people create these sites and then promote them on social media, because then it leads to link clicks back to the site, is because you can make money off of it. And it often just comes down to the green. This was one from Vanity Fair from 2017. Fake news is about to get even scarier than you ever dreamed. What we saw in the 2016 election is nothing compared to what we need to prepare for in 2020, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second here. Nick Bilton, who I'm guessing is kind of a dick. Cameron Harris, a college bro. Really? A college bro told the New York Times that he made up stories on fake news sites that he created for $5. Harris, who concocted stories about voter fraud and Hillary Clinton, made as much as $1,000 an hour, while millions of people clicked on his fabricated posts. I spent the money on student loans, car payments, and rent, he bragged to the Times. I think part of that is looking into the cost of college tuition, that he'd have to do that, or the cost of rent where he was located. But you still have this fact that it's a very profitable thing because when you put fake news out there, one of the ways it's easier to kind of determine it's fake news, and we'll talk about that in a second here too, is the sensationalism of the stories leads people to be interested because it kind of feeds into our worst selves of it. It's like, here's this terrible thing about this person you already don't like, but you probably want to see if it's true. You probably want to learn more because you don't like them. So isn't it kind of probable that this person you don't like does bad things? Click here to find out. And people click and they get to the page, and then there's web ads there. And those ads lead to impressions, and those impressions lead to even fractions of a penny each time for the person who's hosting the site and the creator of the site. But those fractions of a penny add up when something goes viral on social media. And we think about, again, that integrated marketing. I have my owned media of my website. I put it onto social media on my Facebook page. People share it. It becomes earned. I then boost that post through paid media so more people can see it, targeting specifically those people who are most likely to be interested, who are then most likely to share so I can get more earned media. And all these are creating link clicks back to my page. And again, this is how fake news blows up. Without social media, you don't have fake news like we do today. They literally go hand in hand. And the business model of integrated media is basically the perfect storm for fake media. To be able to have a website that if you get link clicks, you can get money off of impressions for the ads that you have on your page, and people want ads on those pages because it's eyeballs. So you make money by being more sensational, promoting on social media, targeting specific people who are most likely to click on this and most likely to share, so more people click on it, because for the most part, those that we interact with on social media are more likely to share our same beliefs and values. So they're going to see the same stuff, probably click on it as well, and then share it out. And again, it becomes this spiral to where you can make $1,000 really quickly. And why does this spread so much? Well, I've talked about some of this already, but part of it's also because we're simply not consuming enough objective news. We're not consuming enough traditional news. You can see the generation gap, and this is particularly true for people 18 to 29, those who are kind of at this point a little bit between the millennial and Gen Z generation as opposed to the boomers. You can see that consume cable, local, and network TV. The 65 plus, the sort of boomers and any left of the greatest generation, 85%. Whereas you look at that millennial Gen Z, 27%. Print newspapers, millennial Gen Z, 5% consume newspapers. Whereas you got the 65 and over, 48%, even the 50 to 64 at 23%, which is almost 5 times as much as the younger generation. Then you flip it to websites, apps, and social media, where you're more likely to find fake news and see fake news spread. Who's at the top? 18 to 29, followed closely by 30 to 49. Then there's a drop all the way down to 65 plus at 20%. So about 2/5 of what we see between that millennials, younger millennials, and older Gen Z. So it's pretty important, the fact that younger people who we've already said we've looked at sort of throughout history as being the least media literate, and also the fact that this isn't something necessarily being taught enough or well enough in K through 12 education or college education, are those who are consuming the most media where they're most susceptible to fake news. So it's sort of, again, the most perfect storm of how fake news can spread. So why then does it spread so much? Well, part of this goes back to some of the things we've talked about as much. In the U.S., we tend to trust information and news from friends and family. The earned media aspect. So when it's somebody who we already agree with and they say something, we're probably going to, and they say something, they post something that fits within their beliefs because we believe a lot of the same things they do. If they say it, it kind of supports, again, this thing that while we might not find credibility in the media, we find credibility in our friend or our family member who has now said something. And we're now basing the credibility of this fake news story not on the site itself, but on the credibility of our friend or family member, which makes it overall more credible. So this is how we see fake news spread so much. And this is from YouGov in 2016. And so you've got this in December, right after the 2016 presidential election. How much do you trust news that your friends and family share on Facebook? 61% said a little, 19% said not at all, 11% said a lot. Now remember, there are 2 billion people on Facebook. So at 11% who say, yeah, if my friends and family post something, I'm going to believe it. Just blind eye believe it. That's a lot. Now, again, they're looking at the United States. It's not necessarily worldwide, but if we have, say, 150 million people in the United States who are on Facebook, and how many people in the United States have Facebook? What percentage of Americans have Facebook? More than 2/3 of Americans, 68%. So if we look at 200 million Americans have Facebook, and roughly better than 1 out of every 10, so probably about 24 million of them are like, yeah, if my cousin posts it, I'm going to believe it. That's how we get fake news. So why is it spread so much? Many people take the same action based on many people take some action based on what they see online. This could be they click on it. This could be that they then vote in a certain way. This could be that they believe something when it comes to political parties, or when it comes to a company, an organization. They see, oh, we should boycott this because of this. Oh, look at this thing this company, organization did. We should now hate them. It's very easy to engage in this sort of clicktivism where it's like, oh, I'm, hashtag boycott such and such, hashtag I'm with such and such, because of some fake news story or some exaggerated news story that was created originally just to get people to come onto a website to create impressions on ads to make a college bro some money. So this is why we see the real impact that this can have, and why it's important to be literate, information literate, media literate, and social media literate. So fake news often goes viral because it's spread over multiple social networks, and in many countries this is the main source of information for a lot of people, particularly those between the ages of 18 to 34. On social media, we tend to less likely critically evaluate that content because it comes from friends and family, and we're then more likely to share that content if it matches our own political beliefs. So a lack of media literacy contributes to a lack of questioning of content consumed and then shared. So again, you can see how all of this snowballs. If you're not media literate, you're not taking a critical eye to the content that you see. If you're not media literate, you're more likely to share the content that you see that fits within your own predetermined biases on any topic, or sort of supports whatever you believe on something. And then it's consumed by people who, because they might not believe and trust the media and see it as credible, but see you as a friend or family member who is, because as a friend or family member, they trust you with stuff. You would trust your friends with a key to your house. You would trust your friends to drive your car. You would trust your friends to pick out a restaurant. Why would you not trust your friends when they share a political story? So it's that same kind of thing. If you're willing to trust them with your life, why would you not trust them with some quick story to read on Twitter or Facebook, or at least then share out the same hashtag or share out the same story, because you don't have time because you got to get back to whatever, Candy Crush or watching the Kardashians or whatever you're doing. Lots of places where you can get tips. BBC has some. One, don't be seduced by simplicity. Studies have shown it's surprisingly easy to mask a lie by making it sound so obvious that it must be true. And this goes back to a saying that is falsely reported to being from Hitler, but this is from a report prepared by the United States Office of Strategic Services to describe Hitler's psychological profile, in which it said, people will believe a big lie sooner than a little one, and if you repeat it frequently enough, people will sooner or later believe it. And that concept is what Hitler used to rise to power. I mean, Hitler was elected in Germany and used his lie that he told to kind of bring himself to power and create Nazism in Germany, which led to World War II, which led to, I think it was around 70 million people died in World War II, which is just a tremendously huge number because we didn't have the 7 billion people in 1940 that we do now. The population was probably closer to 4.5 to 5 million, or 5 billion, which is still a sizable chunk. But when you look at 70 million dying in the span of 4 years from war, that's absolutely incredible because of the fact he understood this basic concept of if you tell a lie and you tell it long enough, not only will you believe it, so will everybody who hears it. But BBC has more tips. Be smart concerning doctored images. Photoshop's making it much easier to doctor images, to change how we view history if you don't think about it, if you don't examine it, if you don't know it. This is how the Russians actually basically were using Photoshop in the early 60s. On April 12, 1961, a Russian team of cosmonauts led by Yuri Gagarin were the first humans to complete an orbit of Earth. One of the cosmonauts, Grigory Nelyubov, I get algorithmic, I had trouble with, was removed from a photo of the team taken after their journey because he had been expelled from the program for misbehavior. And you can see there's a dude missing right in the middle of the photo. And the Russians are like, yeah, you're not good with the party anymore. You also see the one, there you've got R2-D2 there with Lincoln during the Civil War. Again, Photoshop. But if you're not able to critically evaluate the picture and the image, this can lead to a lot of problems because people will just believe what they see sometimes. And as Photoshop gets better, it becomes easier to believe these things. So now we're talking about audio, video, and photos throughout history and how we see history. More tips. Accept your ignorance. Many people suffer from overconfidence, belief that they know more than the average person, and the fact that we don't have to memorize anything anymore because now we can literally look it up, as I did during this lecture when I was like, I should know how many people in the United States have Facebook, couldn't remember. Now that we have this, we feel that much stronger about what we do know because we're like, well, if I remember that, it's got to be important, it's got to be correct, it's got to be true because I remember it. I don't remember all those other things because I know I can look up those things with my cell phone. So as a result, we feel less critical of the information that reinforces our assumptions and dismiss anything that disagrees with it. So if we believe that the sky is blue and we get some information that tells us, the sky is gray, we're like, nope, the sky is blue. No, the sky is blue. We've always known the sky is blue. The sky is going to continue to be blue. Sometimes the sky is gray. If it's a cloudy day, if it's a stormy day, if it's an overcast day, if it's a winter day, we're like, nope, sky's blue. Sky's always been blue. Sky's going to be nothing but blue because I know the sky's blue. You are too confident in your knowledge, and that leads to a problem. Look beyond your bubble. We've talked about this before, echo chambers and the fact that we too often associate with those who agree with our own views and opinions, and then when they present those views and opinions that reinforce our existing views and opinions, we're more likely to not only agree, but then share back out, therefore spreading fake news, which happens even more because of Facebook's algorithm and what they promote in our timeline. Be curious. Education alone does not prevent polarized thinking, does not just being aware does not make you media literate. You also have to create, you also have to think, you have to analyze, you have to be critical. You have to really look at the messages and understand that, again, someone created them for a reason to have a impact on you. So you've got to think about their motivation and you've got to think about their inspiration. Consider the opposite. Ask yourself whether you would make the same positive or negative evaluation if exactly the same study, story produced results on the other side of the issue. So if you read a political story and it says, hey, the people who have a different political belief than you hate this group of people or hate this group of people, if the same was said about you and your people and your views, would you be like, well, that's just stupid? But you willingly agree when someone says about the other side. So we hear this a lot in elections. Well, this political party wants to kill grandma. And literally they have the same idea, that somehow both political parties argue that the other one wants to kill grandma. The Republicans want to take away your health insurance. They want grandma to die. The Democrats want legal immigrants and they want your grandma to die. Somehow grandma's always dying no matter who gets elected. But it's one of these things of like, if you are one side or the other, you're like, nah, we don't want grandma to die. Y'all want grandma to die. Do they really? Does either side want grandma to die? I don't think so. They just have different views on policy issues for the most part. Yes, there are definitely knuckleheads in politics. I'm not talking about them, but the average person really doesn't want grandma to die. Media literacy and personal responsibility is key. The best defense against the spread of fake news is to learn how to identify it. The best way to identify fake news is to be critical of what one consumes, what one shares over social media, and also what one creates. That creation process could also technically include a share, a retweet, a DM. So it's really important for us as individuals to be media literate to prevent fake news. The algorithms aren't going to prevent them. Human curation aren't going to prevent them. AI is not going to prevent them. It's really going to take all of us. But at the end of the day, fake news can get past AI, can get past human curators. But if we don't like it, comment on it, share it, retweet it, fake news dies. So it's literally up to us to be able to recognize it and not spread it.